Joining me, we have Christy Greenberg, MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor, and Perry Stein, Justice Department reporter for The Washington Post. Welcome to you both, and you both were in the courtroom this last week for some dramatic testimony. Perry, we ended the week with Trump's former spokeswoman, Hope Hicks, on the stand. What of her testimony do you think struck with the jurors as they were heading home for the weekend? What's going to be their thought about it?
Right. I mean, I think that Hope Hicks, nothing that she did was said, I don't think anyone can argue, oh, she totally turned on her former boss. It wasn't, very striking in that sense. But what was interesting and what I think she did, which is what prosecutors wanted her to do, which was really set up this idea that they were really worried about this Access Hollywood tape, this tape that we all know where he said those denigrating things about women. They were worried about how that would land with female voters. So what you see from Hope Hicks there was setting up what prosecutors allege was his motive for hiding this Stormy Daniels payment, right? Which was that they were freaking out about the election and they wanted to make sure that no more damaging stories that could hurt his reputation with women would come out.
Yeah, 100% on that one. So, Christy, the prosecution said no more questions after she testified Trump's attitude following the 2018 report exposing Michael Cohen's payment to Stormy Daniels was it was better to be dealing with it now and that it would have been bad to have that story come out before the election. How did that comment button up her testimony for the prosecution, and what else did she bring to the case?
It was such an important moment. It was really to drive home the point that the prosecution has been making, that making sure that these stories did not come out before the election and that these women were silenced was there to benefit the election, his campaign, and to influence the election. That is what they have to prove to be able to show that this was a felony. So it was such an important point, and she was very clear about that. And it was the last question that the prosecutor asked on direct examination. It was a real mic drop moment. And, shortly after that, a few questions into the cross-examination is when she started to cry. So it is something that the jurors clearly were very focused on. And I also would say that it corroborates David Pecker's testimony, because Hope Hicks is saying this is after the election, where Donald Trump acknowledges, yeah, if this had come out before, this would have been really bad for the campaign. Well, David Pecker told a very similar story. David Pecker talked about being in the Oval Office and having meetings with Donald Trump in Trump Tower after the election, and Donald Trump saying a very similar thing to him. Hey, thanks so much for AMI's help in making sure that the Karen McDougal and Doorman stories didn't come out. That would have been really damaging for the campaign. That would have been really bad. So you don't have just one witness saying it. You have two witnesses saying that the campaign was top of mind for him in terms of how these stories would have affected the election.
Mm-hmm. And Perry, we also heard this week from Keith Davidson, Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal's former lawyer, the one who helped broker the hush money payments. His testimony exposed the jury to a very tawdry underworld of media payoffs and actually the first direct evidence of the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. So what made Davidson an important witness?
Right. So, just Davidson's understanding. What struck out to me most about his testimony was he said he knew that Stormy Daniels, or he believed that Stormy Daniels' story, meaning the rights to her story, became more valuable after the Access Hollywood tape, and that they needed to do it before the election because then it became less valuable. So even just that painting that mindset that Stormy knew, the idea that everyone involved seemed to have known that this was all part of the election, right? This wasn't about Trump allegedly wanting to hide this from his family and his wife. Everyone seemed to understand that the value of Stormy Daniels' payoff would be higher after the Access Hollywood tape came out and before the election. So that was pretty striking, is just hearing how he handled that.
Absolutely. Christy, you referenced this, but I think it's important because the jury heard that secret recording made by Michael Cohen, the conversation he had with Donald Trump in 2016 about repaying National Enquirer publisher David Pecker for the hush money payment of Karen McDougal. Let's play some of that. Here it is, everyone.
I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff, because, you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be.
Gets it by
Correct. So I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay with cash.
No. I got no.
Look, Christy, it's one thing to talk about it and have prosecutors say this happened, but how damning was it hearing this in court?
Very damning, because these are Donald Trump's own words. The jury is hearing straight from the horse's mouth. And what are they hearing? They are hearing Michael Cohen going to his boss and walking him through the details. The fact that this was a payment, they mentioned $150,000 to Karen McDougal. The method of the payment, you hear them talking, is it going to be cash or a check? He's walking through at one point in the recording how it's going to set up. He's going to use a shell company to do it, to again kind of keep Donald Trump's fingerprints off of this. He mentions discussing it with Alan Weisselberg, who's another trusted confidant of Donald Trump. And again, the timing of this is so important. This is right before the election, and so that timing of that recording is crucial to making that point that the prosecutors want to drive home, is that this was about the campaign. But it also really shows Donald Trump's knowledge of the ins and outs of this transaction. And just for a moment, when you think about the cross-examination of Hope Hicks, the defense was trying to make this argument if Michael Cohen just goes rogue. Well, this recording shows he's not going rogue. He's going to his boss and he's getting details. And if he did it for Karen McDougal's payment, he surely did it for the Stormy Daniels payment, which happened after the Access Hollywood tape came out. And there was a huge crisis at the campaign about how to deal with it.
Good connection there. So the defense took issue with some of the recordings during the cross-examination of Doug Doss. He's a forensic analyst with the Manhattan DA's office. And he extracted that call from Cohen's phone, Perry. What did they want to expose to the jury with that? Is it what we were just talking about there, that the fact is you cannot get around this, you cannot get Donald Trump away from this or suggest that Michael Cohen went rogue? Does this really nail that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think that you see prosecutors over and over again, their main point is to show that this is Donald Trump. This is, so hearing his voice, hearing him talk about these, I mean, I think that is what they are going to use every witness to try to connect this to Donald Trump. I mean, I think in previous days, we had just been hearing a lot about Michael Cohen, and then you saw the last 2 days, again, they really brought it back to Trump. And that is what, it is not Michael Cohen right now who's on trial. It is Donald Trump, and they need to show that to the jury.
Okay, Christy Greenberg and Perry Stein, ladies, buckle up for what you got coming your way this week. Thank you so much.